Hello, world, and welcome to Creating Light with Kelsey, where we just keep talking about gaining a relationship with our darkness, all parts of self, connecting to the body, the mind, heart, body, and soul, be in unison with it all. But we've been really on track the last few episodes of reconnecting to the darkness because I've been on another journey, another layer of reconnecting to my darkness. And when I say that, that's interchangeable for me as far as facing your shadows, facing your trauma, or anything that is really unpleasant, and making sure we're in constant relation with that instead of rejecting, suppressing, escaping. Because the theme of this episode is when you do that, when you reject parts of self, you are also rejecting your medicine. And I have had that really hit home lately of understanding that on a whole other level. So I'd like to I'd like to share it with you all, real life examples. But also to reiterate that what is the shadow aspect of self in the Jungian terms. And this is also spoken about a lot in shamanic practices. Aspects of self or things or memories that events that have happened or how we behaved in the past or how we're existing now. But yeah, the aspects of self that we may not necessarily like, be fond of, or we wish that weren't a part of us, or things that we wish didn't happen, but they did. And then we try to completely reject it and shove it down and pretend as if it doesn't exist, or not wanting to accept that it does exist or that it is also a part of us. When that full on rejection and trying to disconnect from that aspect of self, that's how it becomes a shadow because we're just shoving it down, neglecting it, and it's deep in the darkness. And then we think, oh, everything's good because it doesn't exist. I can't see it. It still very much exists. It's just now living in the dark. And when that happens long enough, because it's still a part of you, and then if we don't have this relationship with our darkness and what we try to shove away or reject, then our shadow, our unconscious mind, and parts of self start to rule the present moment because they need our connection. They need our love. They need to be in relation with us so we can be in relationship with the medicine that they hold and the positive intent that they hold. Because shadows, just as people, are not innately bad or evil. Everything just gets warped through the bullshits and trauma of life. So, like a common example that a lot of people like to use is with anger. And being, if you are an angry or explosive person, that is not innately bad. But if that's how it always comes out and reacts and is existing in the outward world as far as explosive anger, where it becomes pretty unsafe to be around, then you existing and showing that you may not want to actually believe that that is a part of you or want to accept that as truth and really not like that part of yourself. So you try to push it and shove it down and pretend that it doesn't exist and label it as bad just because the current behaviors are being presented as such as like explosive and unsafe. But the anger itself and that part of self is not innately bad. There is a positive intent behind it that it's trying to communicate to you to have you take action in a more appropriate way in relation to the context at hand. But if we don't have a relationship with that anger, we have no fucking idea what to do or how to communicate to it or how to feel it or how to move forward with appropriate action, which is also suppressing the medicine, is what it's trying to give us in the situation of the appropriate action. We don't have access to that medicine when we don't have access or relationship to the anger, and then it just keeps coming out in explosiveness, and then we keep shoving it away, not wanting to accept that part of self or thinking that it's bad, and then we just get in this loop. And that positive intent, positive, I said that, I enunciated that quite weird, but that positive, okay, I can do this. I'm gonna laugh at myself. That positive intent, that is also within part psychology, which Jung also talks about, but it was heavily looked at even more through Richard Schwartz's work and his parts work. And again, not always reminder that really all of these things originated from indigenous practices. And I keep finding that out more and more, which goes into what I'm about to share in my own personal struggles with the whole rejecting parts of self is rejecting my medicine. Uh, is especially like the parts of self that we all exist in within this like triangle, like in psychology, it's called like, oh, this trauma triangle of the rescuer, the perpetrator, and the victim. That those aspects of self exist within all of us. And we can, and they play on each other and we bounce between one another until we can like gain a relationship with them and pull ourselves out from it to become an observer and witness and take sovereignty of how we go forward when we're triggered with those when those parts of self are triggered, then we'll always be stuck in that cycle and stuck in suffering. That is what creates the suffering and stuck in this trauma triangle of rescuer, perpetrator, and victim. But fun, super fun fact, and that's laced with sarcasm there, is that the trauma triangle, I don't even know the psychologist that came up with that, but he didn't even come up with it. That's like ancient shamanic tradition and practices that then a psychologist came in and said that he founded this lovely triangle of these parts of self that ricochet off of one another. So, yeah, yeah, I've just been discovering more and more, and more so the last 2 years has really been like super eye-opening of most of what exists in the psychology field today was not founded by the white men that say that they founded it. It was stolen. It originated within indigenous practices. And then people came in, mostly white men came in and then stole those practices and then redid it and put their name on it. And then now it's in the gatekeeping world of psychology of a lot of people don't have access to this, to these means and to this wisdom or to facilitate healing unless you have this title of therapist now. So with me, in my personal example of rejecting parts of self is rejecting medicine is I since becoming more and more aware of that in the colonization within the mental health field and how it originated from colonization and oppressing marginalized communities and trying to control and have this hierarchy system and it not actually be of healing. It has changed, but yet if that's the roots of psychology, yeah, there's still so much dilemma in the field. And so for me, as I continue to become aware of that, I started to reject the therapist part of self. And if you listen, if you've been listening to all the episodes, you can hear it, you can see it as I continue to become more and more aware of like, oh, is this actually helpful? Or there's so much more to the mind when it comes to healing. There's so much more to psychology than it come when it comes to healing. But also, we still need the mind, right? Like as a human, that mind is part of us. It is part of the whole in the quadrant. Indigenous cultures and with the medicine wheel, that's they didn't neglect the mind either. But then psychology came in and just really hyper focused on the mind and then disconnected from all the other parts of self. So mind, body, heart, soul. Those four things, the four directions. But anyway, I've been on a journey of then wanting to just reject the therapist part of self and the colonizer part of self of, and it got pretty warped of like on being on the decolonization journey, then turning into completely rejecting and pushing down the colonizer, not wanting anything to do with it because I didn't want to continue to cause harm. And then that started to manifest as no longer being a therapist, and thinking that that wouldn't be helpful. Like I needed to do something else or do something different, but then becoming very lost of my purpose and meaning of the world of like, well, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to help people now? If it's not going to be through therapy, is it just through the spiritual healing lane? And that also has a bunch of darkness and gaps and colonization within New Age spirituality too. Like it's colonization is just infiltrated everywhere at this point. So then once I started to realize that too, of like, okay, the spiritual healing world is pretty much same as far as the potential of harm and the darkness that also exists here, seeing that is both, and then being reminded that we are both, like we as humans and in this earthly plane that we live in, both and the potential for all, anything exists within everybody. And so that's the duality. We all have the potential for the light and the dark and the victim and the perpetrator and the rescuer and causing harm or being helpful, like that exists in every facet of life, every profession, and every human. So realizing that of like, oh, like if I just reject being a therapist, then I will be okay and not cause harm if I only exist in the healing world. But then I was completely cutting off a part of myself and the way that I can be here to help people and the way that I can gift medicine to one another. Yeah, then I just started to spiral and like hide, which is why we're coming back on the podcast because remember, we say this, we're saying this a lot. And if you are a regular listener, we're no longer hiding. So this is the process of undoing and remembering and becoming again, which literally the last episode was remember who you are. So we love that timing. But I will say, I am accepting more and more of my role of being a therapist, and that is just like one role and one hat and one avenue that I'm here to help people. It is not all of who I am and what I do, and I'm also in the like spiritual healing space and making a presence on Instagram and helping people in that way. Like I am literally doing both and looking at, okay, let me not get lost and shame spiral into don't be a colonizer. Because if I fixate on that, then that's exactly what's going to continue to happen. Or I'm going to shut myself off from the world completely in fear of hurting others, which is selfish because then I eventually will hurt others by if I'm meant to be here to help someone else and then I choose to not, then yeah, then that's in a way of like causing harm and selfish of to not be of service to others because there's so many people that have changed my life and mentors and teachers, and if they wouldn't have shown up to be seen and helping one another or help someone else, then I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So it's just kind of like it's this ripple effect, and it's not about you. So check your selfishness in that way and face your fears of like, okay, yeah, you don't want to hurt people. Yeah, you don't want to perpetuate colonization and harm in that way, and also accept that you're human and you are going to mess up, and accept that that you're in a system where it's infiltrated, and as humans we're existing in that system and doing the best that we can, and we just keep learning and doing better and progressing and learning from our mistakes, and I have the authority and the autonomy to do that when I keep being in relationship with all of my parts and all and my darkness. If as soon as I start rejecting that, then I lose my agency and sovereignty. Then the shadows start to run the show again because that's what was happening. Of so much shame came up of understanding more things, and then I just completely rejected being a therapist. It was like, nope, I am not that. Don't pin me there. And then what was I fueling in the process? So much hatred, so much self-hate, which is how hurt people. And then the thing that you don't want to do, it's like, well, I don't want to hurt people. So I'm just like going to take myself out of this role. So I'm not in it anymore. I won't hurt people. But if you do it out of shame and out of shadow, then you're most definitely going to still hurt people. So then the medicine that I was noticing that I was rejecting is that by rejecting that part of self, by rejecting the therapist part of self, and I was rejecting the medicine of being able to be with people in their trauma, to be with people as a guiding light when they're in their darkness and wanting to heal and wanting to navigate their depths and wanting to move on from the pain of their past and make peace with the pain of their past instead of feeling so entrapped and lost and held down and just not even knowing what the heck to do with it or how to exist after horrific things have happened, because holding space for that density in that trauma does very much exist in the mental health realm. And what also still doesn't really exist in the mental health realm is the body connection and the creative expression. Like it's up and coming, it's like more and more, but it's that's there's still that gap there. And there does need to be practitioners like me who are on their journey of deprogramming hurtful things within themselves and who have touched their own darkness and gained a relationship with it and continuing to be committed and devoted to it and connected to the body and healing from the body and not just the mind. Because trauma healing for me and just a lot of other people out there is body based. Like it doesn't last when we're only within the mind space of facing the trauma. Like it's both. Like we need it all to cultivate lasting healing from trauma. But yeah, the people looking for that, a lot of times they're looking in the mental health realm. And if I just exclude myself from that, then I'm cutting myself off from providing from my own medicine of knowing that I do have the capacity and the gift to be in that space, to be in the depths with someone else. Because it's the whole as above, so below spiritual law is as deep as you are able to go is also how high and strong the trunk of the tree of self and the branches go. So, how deep the roots go is how high the tree will grow. Same thing with yourself and any type of relationship. So, like the example that I gave earlier with anger, of like how much you're able to descend into the depths of your anger and getting curious and understanding like what's there and then being able to feel that in your body to allow it to pass through you. And now, because that feels seen, held, and understood, I can rise to that same amount in the other direction within my power. Like, oh, you're triggered by something that someone did, or that you feel disrespected, or you're witnessing injustice. Feel that, descend into that anger, and then you can go forward and take action because you feel in your body, you're connected to that of like, oh, you know what? That was disrespectful. That was unjust, and I need to take action to do something about it to make sure that doesn't continue to happen or stand up for myself, someone else, but you have the capacity to do that or to know what needs to be done because you allowed yourself to be angry. And then if that keeps happening and you keep taking action from that place um, of standing up for yourself, of noticing the disrespect and doing something about it, every time you feel triggered by something, and if that becomes a pattern that's really showing up, then that could be your external world. That's showing you your medicine of like, hey, I'm actually meant to be someone that does this type of thing, that stands up for other people, that takes action on injustice. And how can I continue to do that? And that was within my medicine to serve and to be exist in that way. But you never would have realized that or made contact with that if you kept rejecting that anger and that part of self that maybe previously was explosive when you witnessed disrespect or injustice. If that was just not there and you shoved it down, it never would have had this potential to then become the medicine of something else because that's the positive intent of anger. And also, in case y'all weren't aware, if you reject parts of yourself, and then they do in fact become the shadows, not if, when, um, they just get louder. If you keep rejecting it, the shadow just gets louder. I talk about this a lot within the somatic work, when emotional wave visits you, and then if we're in a pattern of just suppression, disassociation, distraction. We don't get to fully feel that emotion. It doesn't come up and through and be witnessed, felt, acknowledged. Um, it doesn't go anywhere. Then you just stuck it in your body and it didn't get to flow through you. Now it's stuck inside and then it compounds. So another emotional wave comes, you keep trying to suppress it, then boom, it just compounds and compounds and compounds, and then it turns into disease. It turns into mysterious physical pain. It turns into like weird outward emotional unexpected projections that you're just like, I don't, what was that? I don't even know where that came from. I don't even understand why I'm behaving or feeling and thinking the way that I am. It's because of all of these things that we've rejected in these feelings and these emotions, and they're compounded and stuck within. And it gets louder and louder and louder until we finally pay attention because that's all it wanted in the first place. And then the rejecting, then it getting louder of rejecting parts of yourself that are just so major. And it's actually, then it's rejecting part of your medicine. That's how I know like the therapist part of self is just something that I was really rejecting Because it freaking came back. You can't get rid of it. Like, if this is something that is for me and what I'm meant to do, it is part of my medicine, it wouldn't fucking keep coming back into my field and like knocking on my door and things being here. Um, like, and then I would just be in this push-pull. So now coming back into fuller acceptance of it and all of it, like I'm grateful that I am understanding more the darker side of therapy to have to use that awareness to choose differently, to continue to learn and get better and not perpetuate harm. And I'm not going to get licensed because that is just innately harmful in my belief at this point in time. And so I'm just continuing just with the registered art therapy credential, not licensed mental health counselor, don't have that. Because that is, to me, that is fully infiltrated into the colonized system. But yeah, so that's how like you see like what works, like where can you still be existing within your gift, and be within the least harm as possible, um, and gets better from there. But yeah, that just like kept getting louder and louder, and I couldn't escape it. And that's where it's like, dude, you're rejecting this part of yourself, and you're rejecting your medicine, you're rejecting your well-being, you're rejecting what you came parts of what you came here to do. Um, and then in turn, like you will not be well if you keep doing this. And it's just going to get louder. You can't escape it. So, how about we retrieve the therapist part of self from the dungeon that you shoved her in a couple years ago and start again? So get curious, what's something within your life, your existence that you feel like gets louder and louder, or you try to pretend that it's not there, but always comes back around. Because with that too, the therapist for herself and not wanting to cause harm, then like self-hate was here. And it's like self-hate just like kept getting louder and louder. And self-hate very much then turns into the whole hurt people, hurt people. So then, yeah, I was like fueling that self-hate and fueling that shadow instead of facing it and showing the self-hate love. So yeah, for you, what's been coming up? What's been loud? Like what can you not seem to get rid of? And what parts of self do you really, really not like? Get curious about that because that's what's not going to go away. And when we do turn to face it and have the courage to slowly, because it's a process and you chip away at it. It's not just like a boom all in once thing. So know that it won't, it's like it's a process and it's okay to go at whatever pace you need to go at. But yeah, how can you begin to chip away at a wall that may have been built? How can you begin to gain access and understand that part of self or those type of feelings and what they bring? And getting curious about what their intention was. Because for me, and with the colonizer and the therapist part of self, like their intention was the same actually. I just wanted to help people. Like I just thought I was helping people, but it was in such a warped way with the one part of self that it's like, okay, let me teach you a different way that's helpful. Let me take that positive intent and transmute it into something that is actually helpful because now I need to let you know that that's not helpful, but can we do that in a different way? Can we meet your needs in a different way? Um, so same thing for you. What is that? Like, what is the medicine that's lying within that? But you won't even understand or have access to it until you begin to face just that shadow, the darkness in general, and gaining a relationship with that. And I've been doing this, dude. I'd say, I mean, like when I first started facing myself and realizing, like, whoa, yeah, I'm just operating off of, I didn't use those words. I'm operating off of past programming. I didn't understand that language, but I understood. I was like, I'm really behaving like my parents in certain ways, and I didn't even realize it, and I don't want to. Like, how do I become better? How do I like the hurtful things that my parents were doing, I realized I was doing, and then I wanted to no longer do that. Like that started in 2014 and starting to like take inventory in that way of like, whoa, okay, what were they? Yeah, like what was helpful, what was hurtful, and how can I no longer be acting from the hurtful ways of how I grew up. So with me talking now, it's 2025. Whoa, technically 11 years of starting on that journey. Like we just started in 2014 and it was like a slow process and then it was like a bigger opening and 2017. And then like a super like, okay, we're not looking back was in 2020. So yeah, it is a process. So give yourself grace in that. And you're exactly where you're meant to be and on time. There is no rush. Take that with you. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Thank you for listening. And remember, when we see the light in ourselves, we create light in others.